Have you ever forgotten a word, lost your train of thought, or walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went in there? And immediately wondered, is this menopause or is this how dementia started from a mother or father? If you've ever had that fear, this episode is for you. Today, I want to show you two handwritten notes from my father. One was written when he was healthy, the other was written while he was living with Lewy body dementia. The difference between those two notes taught me something important about language, memory, and why menopause brain fog is usually not the same thing as dementia. My daughter used to write letters to Santa, and she did not write the simple ones. She asked real questions, the kind a curious child asks when she is testing whether the magic holds up. And every year, Santa wrote her back because Santa was my father. I am showing you one of those letters now. He answered every question in turn, in character, patient with it all. He told her that Rudolph and his reindeer had a magic way of getting him all over the world in one night. He told her that as long as she and her friends believe, he will always bring toys to all the children in the world. He even answered her question about losing weight and commented yum, yum, yum on what she was planning to leave him as a snack. Near the end of the letter, he wrote, "Yes, I even love you." Now, I want you to look at how that letter is written, and you see the man. The lines run straight across the page. The letters stand even and upright. Every word is spelled cleanly, reindeer, believe, and children, and he plays with punctuation for fun. 3 exclamation points where the feeling runs high. He was an engineer. He retired as the project manager of the X-33 spaceplane, and his handwriting matched the work. It was clean, it was deliberate, it was correct. And he gave the same care to a child's question that he gave to a flight system. I did not pull out that letter for its own sake. I pulled it out with my daughter's permission because a second note shown here in the YouTube version of this podcast was written years later in the same hand. By then, my father was living in memory care. My mom was getting ready to sell their house in Huntsville. He knew the sale was happening and he knew it would happen without him. So he picked up a pen and he wrote a note. And I'm looking at that note and showing you that note right now. The spelling has fallen apart. He spelled done as D-O-N-N-E. Reliable is misshapen. Science is written as S-T-I-N-E. He was trying to write not rocket science, but the word science wouldn't come. For most of my life, my father would have noticed every one of those mistakes before the ink dried. When I first read this note, the spelling was all I saw. Now I see something different. It changed how I understand the disease and how I see my own midlife brain. It might change how you see yours too. Welcome back to the Healthy Life Approach podcast. I'm Kristen Beasley. This podcast is about midlife brain health. Most weeks I share research, numbers, and practical advice. Today is different. I am bringing you a piece of paper and a question I often hear from women. And here's the question. Maybe you're in perimenopause or just past it. You can't find the right word. You lose your train of thought, or you walk into a room and forget why. If you've seen a parent decline or are seeing it now, a worrying thought comes. Is this menopause or is this how it started for them? That's why I'm making this episode, and my father's note will help answer it. This episode is for women who are caring for their own midlife brains while also caring for a parent who is losing theirs. I've been there. My father declined for years with Lewy body dementia, and I was going through my own midlife changes as I watched him. His note taught me something about the brain that helped me tell these two experiences apart, and I want to share it with you because no one explained it to me back then. Today, I want to talk about 2 types of language and 2 types of brain work. One type fails early while the other can last until the very end. When you understand the difference, the hardest moments of caregiving and your own foggy days start to make more sense. Let me explain the situation first because timing is important. In early and middle stages of his disease, my father sometimes had brief moments of clarity. In Lewy body dementia, this is called fluctuating cognition, and it can be confusing for the loved ones because it gives you hope. During one of those moments, he told my mother to sell the Huntsville house. She listened and put it up for sale. I'll be honest, I was hesitant since we had just moved him to memory care in Auburn a month prior, and the quick changes unsettled me. My mother had discussed the house with him many times and was following his wishes. The decision was already underway when he wrote this note. If you read the note for its meaning, you see a clear mind at work. He asks why no one has told him what's happening with the house. He thinks through what might happen next. He said if things are moving slowly, he wants to know how to speed them up. He offers to help and says he wants to be a part of closing the deal. That's a project manager doing what he always did. His thinking was clear. His vocabulary was still strong. He used words like expedite and reliable effort. His grammar was correct, and his sentences followed the same pattern as always. So, if his mind was still working, why did his spelling fall apart? Well, that answer comes from a neurologist named John Hewlings Jackson, who studied language loss in the 1800s. He noticed something interesting with patients with aphasia. They could still talk, greet people, and finish familiar phrases, hymns, or prayers. What they couldn't do was create a new sentence from scratch. He described two types of language, and they are central to today's episode. Propositional language is when you create a new thought on purpose. You use it when you explain something you've never explained before. It takes effort and it's built word by word right in the moment. Automatic language is what you've said so many times that it comes naturally. It's that familiar phrase, a song lyric, a blessing, or a name you've used for years. You don't have to build it. It's already there and your brain grabs it as a whole. Now, here's what matters for caregivers. Those two types of languages are stored in different parts of the brain and they break down at different rates. The effortful propositional system is fragile and it fails first. The automatic system is stronger and can last much longer. Now, think about the note again with this in mind. The phrase, not rocket science, is an automatic language. My father had used it all his life. He knew exactly what he wanted to say, but spelling out the word science letter by letter was propositional work, and that's what was failing. So the phrase stayed, but the spelling broke down into S-T-I-N-E. The meaning was still there, but the ability to write it was not. Now, there's a clinical term for this type of spelling problem, dysgraphia. Someone who has always spelled well relies on the brain's lexical route, which stores whole word spellings. When that system breaks down, the person starts sounding out words instead. Writing Stein for science is an example of this. The word is rebuilt from sound because it can't be pulled from memory as a whole. The doubled letters and odd shapes show how hard the brain is working, even if the page looks calm. This same idea explains something that surprised me near the end. Just weeks before he died, my father could still spell Auburn perfectly. For him, that word was special. He lived in Alabama, he graduated from Auburn, and was a big Auburn fan. He had said, written, and heard that word thousands of times, and it always meant something to him. Repetition and emotion make a word stick in memory. So Auburn stayed as a whole word in his mind, even when science had to be sounded out. There's something meaningful in that, since Auburn was also the town where his memory care home was. The word he could still spell was the place where he spent some of his last days. There's something else the disease did with that word, and it's a lesson I want every caregiver to remember. My father graduated from Auburn with a degree in aerospace engineering in 1962. Sometimes he called the school Auburn University, and other times Alabama Polytechnic Institute. It might sound confusing, but it wasn't. The school changed its name from Alabama Polytechnic Institute to Auburn University in 1960 while he was still a student. He started under one name and graduated under another. Both names were correct for him. The mistake was in the listener, not in him. This is one of the most important but least understood parts of the disease. Old, emotional, and well-practiced memories are the most durable. A French psychologist described this in the 1800s, and it's still true. New memories fade first, while the oldest and strongest ones last the longest. So if your loved one says something from decades ago that doesn't match what you expect, pause before correcting them. They might be more right than you think. The disease also leaves its own mark. In Lewy body dementia, visual and spatial skills are affected early on. That's why the note wasn't just misspelled, it was also crowded with words slanting upward and a postscript squeezed into the corner. The language was failing in one way and the spatial sense in another, both at the same time. Now, I want to bring this back to you because this is where my father's experience and your own might connect. Remember what failed first for him, not his oldest memories or his love, but the effortful system that builds new sentences and finds the right word in the moment. That's the system that goes quiet after a rough night during perimenopause. When you can't find the right word, lose your train of thought, or forget someone's name, you're feeling the strain on your effortful propositional system. This is the same part of the brain that failed first in my father. That's why midlife brain fog can be so scary for women who have seen a parent decline, because the symptoms look like the start of the story you might fear the most. But I want to explain why it's usually not that story. The reason is estrogen. Estrogen isn't just a reproductive hormone, it also affects the brain, including areas for memory and language, and helps control how those areas use energy. Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who studies menopausal brain, has shown that as estrogen drops and changes during menopause, the brain's energy system shifts. When there's less fuel for those effortful brain regions, tasks like finding words, keeping your train of thought, and quick recall are the first to suffer. These are the hardest tasks, and they're the ones that slip when your brain is running low on energy. This isn't just something women feel. It has also been measured. The SWAN study, which is the study of women's health across the nation, followed thousands of women and found that processing speed and verbal memory can dip around menopause. But for most women, these skills recover and stabilize afterward. That's the key difference. In my father, the effortful system was breaking down and wouldn't return. In menopause, that system isn't breaking down, it's just running low on resources and can bounce back. A lot of this is within your control, which I find hopeful. The effortful system is further stressed by poor sleep, and hot flashes can also worsen it. It is also affected by chronic stress, blood sugar swings, alcohol, and taking on too much without rest. Each of these is something you can work on. Now, here's a few practical steps that can help even on your tough days. Protect your sleep by sticking to a regular bedtime and making your room dark, cool, and quiet. If hot flashes wake you up, keep some water nearby and wear layers so you can easily remove them. To lower stress, take even 5 minutes a day for deep breathing, stretching, or short walk without your phone. Eat balanced meals with protein, healthy fats, and steady carbs like whole grains to avoid blood sugar swings that worsen your brain fog. If you drink alcohol, try cutting back or skipping it, especially at night, to help you sleep. And whenever you can, give yourself a break between tasks, even if it's just for a moment during the day. When women tell me that their brain fog has lifted, it's rarely because of one big change. It's usually because they've protected their sleep, lowered their stress, and got back to the basics. It's the same brain, just with more fuel. And I want to be clear about this because it's important and it's my responsibility. I am a health educator, not a doctor. I cannot diagnose you, and neither can a podcast. The goal of this episode is not to tell you which condition you have, but to give you a way to think clearly instead of feeling scared. Menopausal brain fog usually comes and goes, follows your worst nights, and often gets better as the transition ends. But there are signs that mean you should see a doctor. If you notice memory loss or confusion that just keeps getting worse, trouble handling daily tasks you've always managed, loved ones noticing changes before you do, getting lost in familiar places, or struggling much more than before to find words, it is time to get help. Other warning signs include big personality changes, problems with judgment or decision making, or trouble managing money or appointments. These need a real evaluation from a professional who can see you in person. This framework doesn't replace that visit. It just helps you explain what you're experiencing. That's about your own brain. Now, let's go back to the room with your parent because this same framework shapes how you feel there too. When your loved one can still say, I love you, finish a song lyric, or use a phrase they've said for years, it doesn't mean everything else is still there if they just try harder. The automatic part of the brain is simply the last to go. It's real and it's them, but it doesn't mean the effortful mind is still working behind it. If you're sitting with a loved one who has trouble finding words, there are gentle ways to connect that can help both of you. Use short, simple sentences and give extra time for them to respond. Let that silence work for you. Try yes or no questions or offer two choices instead of many. Use their name and familiar phrases and stick to routines you both know, like singing a favorite song or looking at old photos. Sometimes communication is more about tone or touch than words. A calm voice, eye contact, or holding hands can say a lot. Most importantly, remember that your effort to connect matters, even if the response is small or silent. Now, the opposite situation is often heartbreaking for caregivers, but for the wrong reasons. When your loved one can't form a new sentence or answer your question, it's not stubbornness or them giving up on you. You're seeing that fragile part of the brain fail while the stronger part still works. These are two different systems, each with its own timeline. Neither one measures how much your loved one cares about you. That's why I keep my father's note. It taught me this lesson 4 years before I needed it the most. There's one more thing this framework gave me, and it's why I can face my fears instead of letting them control me. The brain loses effortful words first, whether from the disease or a tough season of changing hormones. But the deepest things, the people we love and the pride we feel, are stored where trouble reaches last. I learned this in the most personal way possible. By the end, my father could not build sentences anymore. Most days when I visited, he was asleep or would repeat the same sounds, may, pay, over and over. That's the automatic system at its deepest level, language reduced to rhythm. On a good day, he could still say, I love you, because those words were so deeply learned and strong that they lasted longer than almost anything else. On a Thursday, I came to see him. It was the last time I would ever see him conscious. He was not asleep, and he was not lost in the may, pay. He leaned up in his bed, reached over and grabbed my hand, and he said two words. He said, I'm proud. It took me completely off guard. I told him I was proud of him too. I told him I had always bragged about his accomplishments with NASA. And almost as soon as he had said it, he lay back down and closed his eyes. And those were the last words I ever heard my father say. The next day was a Friday. My daughter and I had planned for months to go to the Living Van Gogh exhibit in Atlanta, and we went. When I came back on Saturday, he was unconscious. His breathing was labored, hospice was called, and for the next 36 hours, his body did the long, gasping work of dying. He never spoke again. So here is what I understand now that I did not understand then. I'm proud was not like the may, pay, and it was not quite like the I love you either. Those words came to me directed in the moment with his hand reaching for mine. Those are the marks of intention, not reflex. Researchers have a name for moments like that. They call it terminal lucidity or paradoxical lucidity, a brief and unexplained return of clear, connected awareness in someone otherwise far past it, often in the final days of life. The National Institute on Aging has funded research into it. It is recognized, but yet still not fully understood. What I can tell you is what it looked like from the bedside. For a moment, that disease stepped back and my father was there. A second thing is happening underneath it. Emotional language does not run through only the sentence building machinery that had failed him. A surge of feeling reaches deeper systems in the brain, and it can carry a few loaded words out into the open when ordinary speech can no longer be built. So when he saw me and felt what he felt, that feeling came through. The disease had taken the spelling, planning, the new sentences, the house, the calendar, and almost everything. For one moment, it did not take him. I want you to hear this. The silence is the fragile system failing. It is not the love failing. And if a single phrase surfaces out of nowhere, a name, and I love you, I'm proud, you're not imagining it. And you didn't earn it by saying the right thing. You are hearing something real break through, whether it's the deepest groove of a lifetime or a window opening for the last one time. Either way, it is them. My father was an engineer who helped send vehicles into space. At the end, what broke through was not rocket science, it was love. And in the end, he would have told you those were the same thing. If this episode reached something in you, please subscribe and share it with another woman who is walking through midlife brain health, their own and their parents. This podcast is where I send the research, the tools, and the honest stories like this one before they go anywhere else. Let me walk this road with you. If you're seeking connection or support, there are online forums and groups where women share their experiences, questions, and encouragement around midlife brain health and caregiving. Places like the Women's Health Network community, the Caregiver Action Network, and even dedicated groups on platforms like Facebook and Reddit can help you find others walking in a similar road. You are not alone. Thank you for being here. I'm Kristen Beasley, and this is the Healthy Life Approach podcast. Take care of your beautiful brain, track it, measure it, optimize it, and hold on to the language that lasts. My disclaimer is I am a certified health coach, not a physician. This episode is educational, not medical advice. If you are experiencing any of these symptoms, please consult a licensed healthcare professional for proper evaluation and personalized treatment. Please consult your licensed provider about medical concerns and before starting any supplements, medications, protocols, or lifestyle changes. This podcast does not create a client-coach relationship. Individual results may vary. From time to time, episodes and materials may include affiliate links that may provide a small commission at no extra cost to you. Thank you for being here.